Well, hello everyone and good morning. Welcome to About Succulents with Gary Bartl, who is a very established Marin Master Gardener. I'm Shireen Ash, a librarian at the Corte Madera Library, and I'm thrilled to have you all here today. The program, we're in for a treat. Gary has generously offered to stay a little bit longer. So we'll do a PowerPoint and his discussion to start with, and then afterwards we'll take questions and answers in the chat. You can pop them in the chat. I'll read them out to Gary, and that way we'll be able to manage that we're such a big group. Gary's going to do a demonstration for us as well. So if you can stay after 11, that's great. If not, the whole program is recorded. So we'll be available on our website and on our YouTube channel within about 2 weeks. So if any of you don't know Gary, just a little bit of an introduction. He is a Marin Master Gardener and has been one since 2001 and has over 25 years of gardening experience. So he knows a little bit about the subject. He's creatively combined his knowledge of gardening and his background in psychology to work with emotionally disturbed youth, which is really impressive. And he was the lead designer of the garden at the Falkirk Center in San Rafael. He's very established in the community. He's done many presentations for me before. So if you haven't met him, you're in for a real treat. So I'm going to ask everyone to stay muted throughout the presentation. Again, questions go in the chat. I'm going to disappear. I'll come back afterwards to manage the questions, okay? So Gary, it's all yours. Thanks so much.
Well, thank you on behalf of the Master Gardeners and the Marin County Library System. Welcome to today's presentation. So you are probably here because you're either a beginner and you want to learn more, you're tired of killing your succulents or plants in general, or you're more experienced and you're hoping to get some extra tips. Well, all of you are in luck. There's going to be so much information that you don't have to worry about getting it all right or right now, but you'll hopefully retain a few of the main points and you'll be able to grow succulents like an expert. So I will be mentioning occasionally a product or a book or something like that. It is not an endorsement. They have just been found helpful in, so we're a non-commercial situation. So, all right, anything else before we get started? I don't think so. Again, I'm going to run through the PowerPoint and then we'll have questions and some demonstration later. So let's get started. So a succulent is basically a sponge, and it's going to store its extra water when it gets it in its leaf, its stem, or its root. And they're very effective strategies. Here we have a couple leaf succulents. So you can see the Senecio with the veins you can almost see going through. And then on the other side of the screen is an Aloe marlothi that's pretty armed as well, so it's going to definitely deter any herbivores there. But they are big sponge tissues, as you people know when you break open an aloe leaf. Stem succulents, like the cactus family and the euphorbia family there on the right side, store in the stem. And you can see the tall Madagascar palm as well. It has that big central stem, but it grows leaves to do photosynthesis. But if it gets too hot or too cold, boop, off they drop, and it has its storage in the middle. And then you can see a couple other euphorbias and a little petalanthus in there as well, which all of those have little baby leaves, and cacti don't. That's how you can tell the difference. Other special adaptations are the shape of the leaves usually. Oh, let me say something about roots quick. The root storage then isn't as, it's kind of a specialty field, and they're called caudexes often. And I'll show you an example later as well. Okay, so we have the shape of the leaves. We have a planned dormancy in their lives. It's usually either a very hot period or a cold period. Succulents also make their own protective chemicals. Wouldn't that be nice to not have to go to DuPont or somebody, just click in and start making your own sunscreen. You know, it wouldn't be causing cancer then at all. All right. And then the physiology of the actual plants is different than the photosynthesis of other plants. It's crussula acid metabolism. Okay, so here you can see the shapes of the leaves. They're much more rounded. And in fact, the other side, it's not a leaf at all, but just like snowballs. They're just the compact surface area is a circle. So they become circular to try to save the water. Now here are some other interesting shapes. A couple in the Mesembryanthemum family there. And then one of my favorite little sedums over on the other side with the little flowers on top. So again, all very round and compact. They often have waxy coatings and or spines that prevent intrusions. Here is an example of dormancy. So the Aeonium genus that this belongs to comes from the Canary Islands off the coast of Africa. And just like a flock of finches got blown to the Galapagos and diversified, there's a species of Aeonium on the coast of Africa that rafted out and populated the islands, turning the one species into 33 or 35, depending upon how you see things. So they took up all the available niches. Now here, you can see it rolled up into a ball, the growing point. So the plant just wants to protect that growing tip so it can grow new leaves in the springtime when the rains come. So it's a Mediterranean climate like ours that the rains come October through April, and then a long, hot, dry summer. And when an Aeonium is growing, you can see leaves all the way down the stem. So we know this is balled up, so that's a sign of dormancy. So you want to water sparingly during dormancy. All right, the physiology. So I mentioned the waxy coatings before. Now, crussula acid metabolism. Normally, the breathing pores of a leaf, called the stomata, are open during the day, and the carbon dioxide and oxygen exchange and water comes in. But here, the plant closes the stomata all day long during the heat, so it can't lose water, and then reopens them at night. So it's been fixing carbon a whole different way than normal plants do photosynthesis. Also, pigments are made. You notice how your succulent might get a little edge colors or might turn kind of even blatantly reddish. Well, that's because it's making sunscreen to protect itself, usually in the summer months. And then it might be just green and regular in the fall. And then perhaps it might turn to color again when it's making the pigments that work as antifreeze to save them, because often the desert temperatures fluctuate quite wildly between night and day. And also we have what are called window plants that let the light come in, and they can do photosynthesis hiding deeper in the soil. Some make their own mirrors and reflect light underground so they can photosynthesize without the lizard or the antelope wanting to eat them. Pretty amazing. All right, here's an example of the protective pigments. We have the Haworthia that's kind of all reddish, and then the little sedum on the other side. You can notice if the leaves are on the top, they're more like a grape color, but if they're on the bottom, they're green, because those are more protected. They don't need to make their protective chemicals because they're not receiving the same amount of sunlight at all. And flowering, a plant's flowering is all based on the amount of light that comes in. So if you have a plant that hasn't flowered for years, perhaps it's because it needs more light. So you might try a new place for it. Here's an example of the window plant. Pretty amazing. Just shine that light down and do photosynthesis underground. Here's an example of a Haworthia cell, I believe it is, where you can see the leaf. I mean, you can see where the windows let the light in, and they're holding, and then the photosynthesis is done back on the back side. Another example, this is Haworthia cooperi, and can get just the beautiful bronze color in the sunshine. And here you can see the windows going, letting in the light. All right, how many of you want to make babies, or they just come anyways? With succulents, they're known for being very prolific. So we have seeds. Every plant that flowers makes seeds, of course. And then there's cuttings or pups. And then some species, even a leaf, a single leaf can make a whole new plant. So propagation just happens. Here we can see Aeonium bursting into bloom. Now that one stalk that has the flower will die. The plant's known as monocarpic, flowering once. But you can see that they're like the agave family. They put in a giant effort and give you a great big blossom, and hopefully have left you with some clones around the bottom, as you can see this Aeonium has as well. And what did I get in the springtime? A whole load of baby Aeoniums. So if you notice, there is a kind of a purple plant back in the corner. That's Senecio crucissimus. So you can see how it overpowers the little seedlings there. And then later on, it itself has been passed by the Aeoniums. Notice the green and the purple, and see how the green ones are kind of more vital and off to a better start. And the other ones are more weaker, but they have better color, but they don't grow as robustly. So that's the trade-off sometimes. And then on the other side, you can see the Aeoniums have grown up. And are they dormancy or growing? So if you look, you can see the shedded leaves there persisting on, and they're rolled up into balls. So they are dormant. Now here is the agave, again, a monocarpic genus that just blooms once and dies. And if your agave starts to swirl in the minute, you're in for a show, but it will perish as a result. So it's going to send up a whirlwind of a giant flower. And it moved up every day, a foot or two up this, maybe 15 feet at least, maybe more. So you can see the unopened buds at the top, and then the yellow part where the stamens are openly active to take the pollen to another plant. And then after those are shed, then you can see down below the pistils get receptive, and you can get the seed pods. And there's an example as it has passed by, how the flowers dry up. And yes, next spring, I was rewarded. I was out weeding, and oh, where did all this grass come from? Because grass, like corn and rice, bamboo, they're monocots. They come up with one baby leaf. And most plants are dicots. They come up with two. But then I noticed the thickness and the quality of the seedlings was quite different. And you can see the little seeds are right on top sometimes of the little sprout. And yes, I do still have some of those originals growing, even one in the yard. Here is a Haworthia. So you notice the two big ones, and the one has kind of some marks on it. So I was like, well, should I buy the plant? Well, of course, when I looked around and saw all of the extras, certainly it'll grow up quick. And that plant actually will grow and replace those leaves that are discolored there fairly quickly too. But I had 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 something little babies just right off the mark. But check this out. Just that one little section there, you see it over there on the left side. It has one big one, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. How many little ones? So these plants want to grow for you. You just give them a little help. Don't water them too much. Don't burn them out, and you're going to be successful. Look how they want to just give you more babies. Now here is a monodenium that I have taken some cuttings from as well. You can see one even has a little root growing out of it already. Those are called little adventitious roots. So in case a rock from a landslide hits the plant and blows it to pieces, the pieces will fly down and be ready to root when they land in a good crevice and have access to some soil. So again, you want to take a fairly large section, especially with euphorbias and this family, where sometimes you need, like I said, a single leaf. But here, the larger the cutting, the more likely it'll survive. Now, here is an example of an inadvertent stem cutting. So this piece of aeonium was abandoned on a side of a fence and got iron rods thrown over the top of it. And it gives up? No, it roots itself into the board and turns its head up to face the sun and just does a 90-degree turn. Now, if that isn't a sign of wanting to grow for you, I don't know what is. Here's an example of, again, a little side shoot, and it's already growing its roots. So it's all ready when it falls off, the wind blows too hard or it gets kicked, and it has a head start on rooting itself. It's already got them ready. Now this is an Aloe plicatilus. And usually they are grown from seed, but they take years and years to grow up. So usually you propagate them by just sawing off an arm, letting it heal. Now, when you take a cutting like that, you don't put it in water, you don't put it in soil right away either. It's just like rubbing dirt in a fresh scab. No, you want the scab to harden over, and then you plant it. So in this case, it's a couple inches wide, so definitely at least a week. Some cuttings you take, you can probably put them in later that afternoon or the next day or two. And some, of course, like jade plant, we know that you can probably just break them right off and stick them right in the ground, and they'll probably grow fine. But if you do, it does have a higher chance of getting a rot or something and not rooting them. So it is best to wait. Just keep it in a kind of bright but no direct sun, can get some light. And then after a few days, you pop it in the dirt, and you'll be able to tell within a month or two, you'll wiggle the stem and it won't wiggle like it first did. It'll be real firm. And eventually then you can just pick up the plant by the stem when it gets fully rooted like this one was. Here's an example of leaf propagation of some echeverias. So Echeveria Lola there, taking off some of the leaves. And on the other side, you can see how you can stick them right in and grow them. Now, basically the little leaves will grow roots. You can put some out on your windowsill and just watch them grow roots. So people do it all kinds of ways. Just putting them on top, putting them in about a third of the way, I found is a real successful way. But most will succeed. Now, when they turn kind of black and gushy or something, just pop them on out. But the little plant, it'll suck all the water out of that mother leaf while it grows a baby little plant with some little leaves and some roots on the end that was attached to the plant. Soil, the foundation of any plant, is very important for succulents, especially clay soil, because it retains the water that the succulents aren't used to sitting in. They want to have a big thunderstorm, get totally inundated, drink it all in, fill up all their little crevices, and then let it dry out. It knows it's in for it. So soil is composed of three main components: the sand, the silt, and the clay. And of course, there's organic matter and bugs and fungi and all kinds of other things, but mainly sand, silt, and clay. So sand, you can actually work a single component in your hands, right? As often we get it in our swimsuits or our socks, and it's no fun. Silt and clay, however, especially clay, is very microscopic. Clay is very important because it's the medium that holds all the ions in suspension and allows the plant root to come by and go shopping. So we have to add something to our soil to make it more desert-like, to make it more porous, essentially. And lava rock, sand, pumice, or perlite. We are blessed to live in a place where they sell the best lava sand, and it's right here in San Rafael. The ratio I usually put in a half and half. So half of regular potting soil and half lava sand, and you get a very good mixture. Perlite is a possibility. However, it's a man-made chemical. So we take up a mineral, put it in a big oven and heat it to high degrees, and it pops like popcorn, kind of. Well, the earth has already done that with the lava sand and the pumice. So it's much smarter and a better use of energy to just get the stuff that Mother Earth's already made for us. The more the sand, the better. Sometimes on rare plants or some particularly difficult plants to grow, it might even be 75% lava sand because you really want the water to drain out. So again, this isn't an endorsement, but you can find the lava sand at American Soil, or what's now called, I think, A&S Landscape Materials. And they have a website, I'm sure, and a phone number. So we are blessed. It's the wonderful medium, and use it. Otherwise, pumice, if you live near horse country at a tack and field place, it might be called dry stall. It's a product used to, of course, absorb liquid, hence the name dry stall. So I don't know quite how it all works out, but pumice is a wonderful addition to soil. All right, water and irrigation. You can see how this plant is wilting in front of your eyes, drying up like a sponge. So they aren't like the impatiens where you leave it for an afternoon, you come home and it's all wilted. Oh no, I'm dead. So these plants will wilt over a long time, and you can watch them and then give them a good drink, and then you can see the leaves all plumped up and everything's wonderful. So water once a week, right? That's it. We'll move on. What? You guys want more information? Watering once a week's not enough? Well, you have to observe your plants. But generally, for container culture, once a week. In the ground, you can stretch it to 10 days, 12 days, maybe 2 weeks even, especially after plants are established. Any new planting is going to need more care and extra water over that first summer in particular. So other things about watering. Well, we can ask more of the questions, but generally, if your leaves are drying out crispy, you're watering great. If your leaves are getting black and green and brown and mushy, that means fungus. That's probably overwatering. So try better to withhold the water longer periods in between time, and hopefully you'll have more success. Most of my gardens I put in are not irrigated with automatic sprinklers. So most are hand watered, although some people do prefer that. Luxury or ease of having that. I like the hand watering because it keeps you in touch with your plants and you're able to spend a little time with them. All right, the integrated pest management system is developed through UC Davis and the Master Gardeners and other people. And so it's a philosophy of least interference and best horticultural practices. So if you plant a plant that likes a bog environment, really wet environment, in a dry succulent garden, it's not going to do well, just as a succulent in a bog is not going to do well at all either. So the right plant in the right place. Also, planting like water-loving azaleas or under oak trees isn't a good idea because the oak wants to be dry over the summer and the other plants need regular watering. So you can create real problems that way. So know the plant, know the pests. If you have a certain disease in your area, get a specimen of fruit tree or whatever plant it is that is resistant to that kind of disease. You'll have a much better experience that way. So enjoy your garden, get out and water, observe it. And the earlier you catch any problem, the easier it is to treat, whether it's an infection or an infestation. Often a problem is in the cultural conditions of a plant. It's in the wrong soil, it's too sheltered, needs more heat, needs less heat. So that is a real problem. So get it in the right place. And then if you come across a situation where you need to treat, we don't just zap chemicals at it or whatever. We have various strategies that start with without the need for that kind of thing. But it is in the arsenal if you need it at the end. By all means, it's something that can be used. All right, let's move along. I hope we're zipping through good. So here we have the bugs and pests section. How many people have aphids on your plants? They come, I think, in pretty much every color of the rainbow: brown, green, yellow. I don't know, red maybe, but I haven't seen blue, so I guess not blue. They love attacking the fresh new growth or the flowers where all the energy is being pumped up to. And mealybugs, the cottony kind of little pest you might see, and scale. Those are the three main insects. So scale is the armored division. They hunker down and they have an impenetrable shell. So you can only treat either when they're young and called crawlers before they've settled down. And otherwise you would have to treat with a systemic that goes inside the plant. So treating them, a great remedy is a mixture of rubbing alcohol and water, 50 to 50. Rubbing alcohol and water, mix it up in a, this is an old Windex bottle, but you can get spray bottles all over, but 50-50, and it works. Also, just a hose spray, especially on roses, was just going to get rid of 90% of the pests right there. And also remember that you have beneficial insects that might want a little bit to eat too. So what else then for those? Well, you'll see some pictures in a minute. Otherwise, mammals, birds, slugs, snails, frost and fungus. Oh, there's a whole bunch of things that can go wrong. So here is an example of the mealybug, especially there in that Aloe plicatillus. So they make their cottony, they're like the special forces. They hide in there away from their enemy. They camouflage, and where the aphids just throw great numbers at you. These two can really be very prolific and get an infestation out of control very easily. So the next one is probably aphids and mealybugs, and then the other plant is after it's gone. So maybe you've treated for it now, but you can see the disturbed growth, but eventually those leaves will grow out. So the plant isn't doomed. The Chrysimus again, the Senecio Chrysimus muertus frigidus in this case. Yes, it's a frozen specimen. And it was a very bad year for frost this year. We had quite a few hard ones, and definitely I know a lot of people that lost a lot of plants. Some genuses are more hardy than others, but this took out a lot. So with frost comes the fungus. So when you go out in February or March and it's suddenly a sunny day and you look at your plant, oh no, it's got the fungus. So in this case, with the rosette plant there, looks like a little aloe. When the fungus gets to the center like that, it's pretty much over for the plant. If you just have a leaf or two you see around, go ahead and pull that leaf out and clean up any tissue around there. And, the plant will usually just go along fine. And the other stem succulent there looks like it has two funguses going even. So not a fun thing. So overwatering or frost damage leads usually to the fungus. Oh, we're at design already. We are moving along quick. Good. So how do you put a garden together or a little container? Well, often it's just what looks good to you is probably going to turn out pretty well. Now, often, although I put in succulent gardens that are whole yards, often though they may be smaller places such as this one. So you have a chance to really make a, kind of a statement. So here I've used vertical flagstone in the back to act as a mountain backdrop that allows me then to descend, as you will, and make little dry creeks and hills and valleys and things to make it more interesting. A hilly terrain is usually much more interesting than a flat one. And then let's see, colors, contrast and repetition and numbers selection. Usually it's not 2 plants, it'll be 1 or 3. And somehow we're more attuned to that odd number, where in other societies, 2 and 4 or 6 might be perfectly good for their evens, and it seems fine to them. So what makes you happy is going to usually be a good garden. Here is top dressing. So especially when I'm making a small container, having the bare dirt is not nearly as interesting as having another element of the design. So you have, especially if you're using designer containers instead of just the standard clay or black plastic, there are many excellent containers now made for succulents, and then you can match top dressing and have just a wonderful situation. So what do you think of those two, with or without? So it's definitely nice without it even, but I think it adds a little bit more having the top dressing. Now here's a series of 4 shots. So this is when the garden was put in. And then it's probably 6 or 9 months between every picture, and you'll be able to see just how the garden grows. There's a few, especially on the back, that are just going to take off. Now there's a giant cow and Coe there, and then the pachypodium in the middle with the leaves going. So now, boom, then it really shoots up. I mean, look at everything, even that agave on the left. So it has some time, and suddenly way too big. Look at that euphorbia on the right, just growing right out. So then after a cleanup and a pruning, you can see how things are back under control. So we'll run through one more time for you quick. Just growing little. And then the jungle, and then redemption and clean again. Here is an example of a larger situation, a home in Mill Valley. This one you can actually drive by and see right as you leave Boyle Park. It's on Sydney Street. And the friends recently remodeled. So there you can see the amount of soil. Wow. And you notice the red. Well, that's the lava sand there mixed in. So it's got to be, otherwise you're going to run into trouble. Ta-da! And there it is, a little finished version. Now, that plant in the background there that you can see just by the mailbox is now at the top of the window. That's an Aloe Hercules. So was put in 2015, I believe this was. And there's a little side box outside the door. And a lot of that soil went into that big box there on the left. And that was a couple of yards itself in there, I think. And they always need a little tending to, but don't let that guy near your garden, so you'll be in trouble. And there's a little close-up of what that looks like. And then here's a little later when the Chrysula fulcatas are out in bloom there. And you can see the Aloe Hercules has already grown up a little bit in this picture. Lots of small plants, a couple big rocks, and look at how those plants just crawl around there. The one with the purple, Echeveria noduloso, is one of my favorites there. Those are two cacti. I seldom use cactus. It's usually the succulents, but I'm starting to even use a few of those now. Oh, there's a little picture of the cooperi. Yeah, Haworthia cooperi. So very cute little plant. And it's in the lily family related to the aloes, and it sends up this little white flower stalk with a bunch of little tiny white lilies. The hummingbirds even fit their little snouts into and drink away. And a close-up example now, and the different times of day. So look at how things change. That's with the sunset lighting there. And that's Aeonium nobili. No, nobilis, nobili, something like that. They're the very large and thick-leafed variety of Aeonium. Vertical shot, that's a euphorbia there, looking like a little saguaro cactus. And the crown of thorns flower there, and the little agave, miniature agave is beautiful. One of my favorites there, the euphorbia with the crazy leaves that come out. Now that little base, that'll grow into even the size of a pineapple and can have 100 leaves or more on top. Now here you can see how I've really incorporated the plants right into the crevices and things, kind of just like it happens. But there's all kinds of different little, especially the mesembaranthemums and little euphorbias and all kinds of interesting plants. And we're almost to the end, I think. In fact, that's it. Well, thank you for going through our lecture there. And I think Shireen will pop back on. There she is.
Hi, everyone. Wow, Gary, that was amazing. So much information and so many beautiful and inspiring slides. So we have some questions. Oh, you're very welcome. It was really fabulous to listen to. We have got some questions in the chat already, which I'll get to in a second. Yeah. But I want to encourage anyone else who had a question to pop it in the chat, and I'll get to it. So I'm just going to roll back to the beginning. And our first question, Gary, is, do all cuttings from succulents have to heal over before being put into the soil?
Yes, that's, now when you break apart a little sedum, it's the little stem is going to be so tiny. Do you really have to? Well, it's best to wait. But that's a situation where maybe not, when it's something so tiny like that. But any kind of succulent with any kind of heft, these cuttings I had to take, and so you definitely want something that's thick like that to dry off to have a chance. Leaves, they can kind of go straight in usually, but yeah, you definitely want to let it heal off. Okay. Although you might even have a lot of success if not, but you're going to increase your chances if you do.
Gary, I was going to suggest maybe if you stop sharing, then your image will be bigger, especially for the demonstration. That'll be helpful, although that is gorgeous. Okay, so great, thank you. So the next question is, how can I tell if a succulent will flower?
Well, flowering, as I mentioned earlier, is based on the amount of light. So it's hard here to often get enough light for succulents But if you have a very sunny spot, you should be successful. Like the Crussula fulcata blooms usually in July, and I have that out in full sun. Now, if a plant's not getting enough light, am I full screen?
You are.
Okay.
Yeah.
If a plant's not getting enough light, we have a situation where it will stretch and grow. So the length between the nodes increases dramatically as it tries to get to some sun. So normally they're very tight rosettes here. So this is called etiolation, and it works. I mean, it's a situation with other plants too that they will do this searching and going. So if it's not flowering, it's either because it's immature and hasn't grown up enough, or it needs more light. But all plants flower basically.
Okay. So
except
the best
primitive ones, they have spores, but they're still flowering. So yeah.
Okay. So it's really monitoring the situation, the environment.
Right. Giving enough light usually is the problem.
Okay. Our next question is, do the pebbles on the bare ground keep the plants from spreading?
No. Basically, there's a couple functions. One is the look of it is good, but also if you have a succulent and its leaves are sitting in bare dirt, when it gets wet, they're actually next to the saturated surface. But if you have a couple pebbles there, it is setting up and not sitting in direct contact with wet soil. So it's a lot better of a chance for not getting a fungus. Plus, weeds have to grow longer and stretch through there, so they're often a little weaker and easier to pull out. But the plant is just going to propagate right around that and go where it wants to. Yeah, so no, it won't stop you from getting babies. Only cutting them off is the only clue or cure.
Thank you. What is the bottom layer under the lava sand? Rocks for drainage?
Well, you want to, we were taught years ago, you put a bunch of broken crock or something in the bottom, but that was actually shown to impede drainage. So you need to have the soil medium down in contact with the bottom of the pot, or in the case of a planting in the ground, you'll just have the dirt. But it's the soil mix, 50-50 is underneath, the top dressing.
Okay.
So it would be a special soil mix. And if you're planting in ground, I would just add lava sand to 50% to your hole. So you have again a 50-50 mixture, and you'd want to mound it a little bit higher, especially outside, so that its roots could be, even an inch or two up, that a big storm, when the water pools, they'll still won't be inundating the crown, hopefully.
Okay, thank you. There's a question about you mentioned that hummingbirds like a particular flower. Could you name that again, please?
That's the Haworthia, well, the lilies, the lily family, the Aloe, Gasteria, and Haworthia genuses, or genera, excuse me, in particular. And aloes often have hundreds of blooms on larger plants. So those all feed them. Echeverias, graptopetalums. Pretty much only Euphorbia isn't one I've really seen them at, or Senaceous, but most of the Crussula family too will feed the in critters. And there's an aloe that blooms every month of the year. So if you're growing a full swath of aloes, you should keep your hummingbirds well fed.
That's good advice. Someone told me that the easiest succulents to maintain are the mounding type. Do you agree? And what are some examples?
Type? Do you mean like spreading or?
Lisa, could you clarify? She just said mounding. So Lisa, if you want to pop that in the chat, I'll look for it.
Crussula family is the easiest to propagate from. They're even single leaves. So here's Aloe plicatilis again, which would be cut and then rooted. But let's see if I can get a shot here. Do you see those little baby leaves that have come along for the ride?
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, so this is a sedum rubotinctum that just dropped its seeds right on it.
So, she clarified that mounding was all she had heard. So maybe we should just reframe the question to what are some of the easiest succulents to maintain?
Yeah, the Cursula family are probably the easiest.
Okay.
The jade plant is in there, the Cursula fulcata. The other genuses that are there, genera, sorry, um, Echeverias, Graptopetulums, and Sedums. Some of those get buried in snow even. Um, so they're very hardy and easy. So those are the easiest genuses.
Thank you. Do you want to adjust the camera so we could see your face?
Well, I was going to.
Oh, you're going to do it. Do you want to
Okay.
you want to do a demo and I'll wait on
Yeah.
questions for a bit?
Oh,
Or
well,
should I?
got any? No, you can go
Okay.
on.
Go with questions? Okay.
Yeah.
You tell me when I should pause.
Okay.
What is the best or easiest way to identify each species?
You can get a picture book. There is. This book, it's out of print now, the illustrated Encyclopedia of Cactus and Succulents has excellent photos of, diagrams of the family. So this is the Aloe family there. Another family, here's another one, but generally plants should come with a label, and that would be the best one. Otherwise, you'd have to maybe send a picture to me or the nursery or something to help identify it. But hopefully it comes with identifying tag. They're supposed to.
Thank you. How do you know how a plant will propagate?
Well, by breeding or asking. So if it's a stem succulent, it's going to propagate by stems. So here's the euphorbia. Now, this one appears a little small, but this should make a wonderful cutting. So I would cut it down here. And it's going to have, now this genus has a white sappy latex that's kind of poisonous and irritating. So you'd want to make sure you have gloves on. And then the spray that we have, the rubbing alcohol and water, happens to neutralize and dissolve this very latex. So you just spray then the ends to stop the bleeding and kind of cauterize it. Now, this is a situation where you take this cutting, it's bleeding sap, it has to sit and harden off, or you could get fungus and disease very easily in there. Now, a more foolproof, again, this is in the Cursula genus. So I wanted to propagate this one up so I'd have enough for a while, not have to worry about finding it at the nurseries. So I had some that were out front and some that were out back. The ones that were out front got more light apparently because they produced blossoms, beautiful, but they produced maybe half as much vegetative material. So they spent all that energy blooming, where the ones in the back received less light. They didn't receive the threshold to bloom, but they made up for it in doubling in size. So you can just take your little cutting, boom. And now I even have another side shoot here that I could take off. And then I'd let this harden a bit. And then I would just plant it about, that high, maybe even ground level. And I'd be all set. This one down here. There again, and there again is a couple extra babies for you. So that is how you would take stem cuttings from a succulent.
Are you ready for another question, or did you want to?
No, another question, yeah.
Okay. Are there succulents that are native to our area?
Yes, there are. The Dudleyias were in the news for being ripped off in nature and being sold. and also the sedum spathiphyllum. Can find that growing when I kayak around Point Reyes. There's some succulents in the Sierras, and there's a cacti for sure that are around in our southern deserts. So yeah, it's pretty interesting to go find some that are local.
Okay. Here's a great question. Are clay or wood containers better than ceramic or plastic for succulents due to being porous?
So porous means that the water will evaporate more quickly. So if you have a plastic pot, it's going to, less evaporation is going to happen than through a clay pot. And wood boxes are fantastic. So they're all good, appropriate mediums, but the clay might need a little extra water. You might need, 5 days instead of 6 or 7 days is all. But yeah, they all work well. I use them all.
Oh, good to know. Okay. How do you plant the succulents in between the rocks? Is there soil that you just push the plant into? Looks like such tight spots from your photos.
Yeah, well, so I have a rock and I have all the soil built here, and then I'll create the nooks or crevices. So then I'll have a little place to do that. I pack the soil in behind it, and then I put the rock on top. So I create it as I go, kind of, yeah.
So once again, you structure the rocks, you make a space for the dirt, and then you cover with the rock?
Yeah, well, I mound up the little dirt on top of the root and then I'll place the next rock on top. So there'll be an opening, might be a couple inches where the plant is, and you just don't see the soil essentially that's there, behind it. But so I kind of started with rocks when an echeveria would grow up maybe, and lose lots of leaves, and it'd be 3-4 inches off the ground and looking kind of silly. Well, I'd put some rocks around it, and then it looked kind of more interesting somehow. So just start basically playing with it, and you'll get better at it. That's all there is to it. Now, here's a real problem with succulents. You buy one, and look what it does. It turns into all of these babies. So we want to gently tease away. Now, when I do a transplant, I want to get rid of all this duffy stuff on top. You can see it's going to have the other weeds. It's going to have the mosses. It's going to have all that stuff. So be very careful. Don't do this at home. You just be making babies. So look, we've just made how many babies? And gotten the computer a little bit messy. So I want to make sure I clean off. There's no bugs around. So often in the crevices, you'll find them. If the inside of your pot has a bunch of white spots, it has root mealybug. So just tease these away. And you always want to disturb the plant roots. You don't just want to take a pot out and boom and stick it in the ground. The roots will think they're still in the pot. You have to actually break them up. And there you go. And look how many babies. We got babies upon babies. And this is a little Haworthia. Again, it will send up the little white lily and have a really good feast for the hummingbirds. Okay, question?
Yeah. This person saw a beautiful plant at the botanical garden that grows in a spiral. She was told it needs cooler temperatures. Can we grow it here in Nevada in a swamp cooler section or a greenhouse?
Is that the Aloe polyphila, perhaps? It's a very symmetrical plant that follows the Fibonacci mathematical sequence, probably. And that grows on the side of Kilimanjaro and gets buried in a little bit of snow. And basically, it doesn't do well in our climate. Now, it might on the coast or San Francisco, but in San Rafael, they get burnt. And I imagine Novato probably would too, unless you had a kind of a redwood situation or it was kind of cool and you planted on the edge of that. That might be the way to work it.
Do you think a swamp cooler section of a greenhouse would work, or?
Possibly, yeah, if you keep that the temperature down. Yeah.
Okay, so possibly. Okay, very good. Um, I keep my succulents in part sun as it seems like they don't like the heat here in Nevada.
Uh-huh. Perfect.
Okay.
Good. As long as yeah, things are working.
So here's a comment. Thanks for the pebble answer, but I want my plants to spread like ground cover. Will they make it with no soil to grow in?
Well, here's an example. This was a ground cover one. So it spread across. It did find one pot neighbor it rooted in, and it's putting out these other roots here. So this grew right over the top dressing and right over to the next plant. And so the dirt, if it has places to root along the stem, it's going to reroot itself and grow faster, for sure. So you have to have it on dirt. If it was on trying to grow over concrete or something, it can only go so far.
Are there particular succulents that work better as a ground cover?
Oh, sedums are a big ground cover. And we have Senecio, the blue greenish one. People have probably seen Mandrulaceae, something like that. It's a good ground cover. That was a Senecio there I showed you. Yeah, so sedums, some mesombranthemums, the ice plant family. There's some very nice ones there that are ground cover, but not so invasive as the regular ice plant we think of.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
So this question is, I have a tree aloe that grows and grows but never flowers. Maybe too wet, not enough sun? What do you think?
You know, is it a Hercules or is it a dichotoma or the other Abansii? I haven't seen mine flower either. Those ones probably need some more time, or it's just too much that they won't. Yeah, I've never really seen a Hercules in bloom. And that's the cross of the other two. So it would most likely be one of those three.
Okay, thank you. Do succulents need fertilizer? Is that a good choice?
Generally not, because they don't grow in a very nutrient-rich situation. Now the growers, they're going to grow them right up. Oh, this is a perfect segue. So they're going to have the soil. It's full of peat moss. They keep it wet. Because they want to get something up to, you know, like this growing, and it takes 3 years to grow up a little mesombranthemum for sale. So they want to have it. They don't want it to take 5. They want to take it, you know, less as they can. However, often it'll produce extra and kind of unconsolidated growth, and it'll just get attacked by the mealybugs. Maybe if you had a giant container and, you know, it's got this giant agave and it's turning a little yellow, sure, it's used up most of the soil. It's going to need some supplements, but the best thing would do would be change the soil. But that'd be a situation where you'd give it some, and I'd cut it in half strength, and but that's about it. Otherwise, they just really don't need it. You're wasting your money.
Okay, great advice there. Sunny is sharing to everyone that iNaturalist app by the Cal Academy is a good app to take a photo and upload it to get a suggestion of names of the plants.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, so again, iNaturalist app from Cal Academy, and people can share that.
Okay, so we were just talking about the soil that we have from the nursery. So
Gary stalled.
you can't see me or hear me?
For some reason, the computer just stalled out. So let's try it again.
All right. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. You look great. Yeah.
Right, internet connection is unstable there. That left. Okay. I think we're okay then.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks
so
for adjusting.
The soil, you can see after a year, it's already way down below. And these things just come out. Now, also, you're going to water in the summer and you're going to be wondering what, you know, you think you've saturated it, but no, it lost contact from the edge of the pot and it's going right around the plant. Sure, it's going to wet this a little bit, but the plant remains dry. So if you have that situation, I plunge water them. You can do it in, You can do 6 little ones at a time, or you get a bucket or any kind of tray and you put the plant in and you water it. Now, this one you can see is made with my soil. And so it's not full of fluff and things. So I even like to transplant from the nursery into my own soil within the first year. Otherwise, something, like this can happen. Now here's one that definitely needs repotting too. Look how little that is for this pot. It's amazing how they don't give you that much soil as they should. So here's the Vera Higgins that's been transplanted, and one that hasn't. You can see the other one is a little bit more robust. Here, unfortunately, is example of mealybugs. Can you see that white stuff in there? Well, if not, trust me, they're there. So here was a situation where I've put in some euphorbias, and obviously this one didn't take. But look at that. The rest are all rooted already. It's only been 2 months maybe. And this one, of course, didn't make it. Now, here's a situation where, do you see this leaf right here has broken off? Well, here is the broken off leaf growing roots and its own new plant from not even a full leaf, a broken off leaf on this little Callan coat. Now we get frost damage. So usually it's goners here, but let's just see. In this case, this might grow from there, which is very rare, but usually when the crown goes, the whole plant is gone. So they had one of my favorite little cuties the other day. It's an Avonia. Now, this is a situation, transplanting, where you can see why I want to throw away all this top layer there. So push that away, and then let's see, we can take off these. Ooh. Now, agaves and aloes, you can basically take them down to pretty much bare roots. And now we plant that back up. It's going to look a lot better and nicer than the other one. When you have stem succulents, you got to give them a little extra time. If they look like they aren't healthy, they're bad if they're soft. If the stem gets soft, that's when you know they aren't going to make it. But they often go dormant and then eventually will leaf out for you. Here's an example of a Euphorbia obesa taking the slim form as it can to protect itself from. And then here is a melliformis that is the same idea, and it gets a nice little spiral. The interesting thing about the melliformis is it can often take quite a variety of sizes and shapes. So each one is kind of its own unique. Now, in this case, these arms, yeah, see, look at this, is just ready actually for propagation. So that might be happening soon for me. Now, these ones are really attached, but these ones are kind of like ready to just come off, as you can see. So again, that was be very careful. Here's a monodenium, and I'm lucky enough to see it get a little couple flowers there coming out. So it's kind of a very interesting lighter color. Again, frost damage. So even the good growers are going to lose them. Lately, I've been getting into what are known as Euphorbia obesas. Medusas, because they have all the arms and the snakes. So these are some that I get from Southern California, such interesting shapes and forms. Now here is an example of frost damage, but the plant died back, but you can see it showed me where it died back to, and it is re-sprouting now, and luckily wasn't killed altogether. So there is sometimes renewed hope.
Gary, I've got a couple more questions, so let me know when it's a good time.
Yeah, and here is aphids probably. I don't know if you can see them on there. Sure, let's have another question.
Okay, so the question was, are succulent walls difficult to create or maintain, and are succulent wreaths difficult to create or maintain?
You can buy forms of the wreaths and put your succulents in. So they'll need to be taken down and kind of watered, or, so that's a little more difficult. And the first one besides the wreath was what?
Oh, the succulent walls.
Oh, okay. Again, they have the framework you can put it in. Some of those have automatic watering to them, so they're fine that way, but they might need sun. Sometimes they get uneven sun, and that one side grows and one side doesn't. So so long as you can keep it going, that's great.
Okay. A question again about the soil you're using. So what is the difference between your soil and what comes from the nursery? I assume the lava rock, but lava rock is red and your soil is not very red.
Well, it is if you could see it. Actually, it gets pink because I put so much lava sand in it. Well, essentially, they have, like I said, a lot of peat moss. They use perlite probably, and it's a medium meant to pump them up and to keep wet. If it dries out, it becomes way less effective and separates from the container. And so it doesn't really have a lot of clay, a lot of the mineralness of the soil. So it's very light. When I held up that little plant, this is like 3 times as heavy as theirs. It's because I have the real rock and real soil instead of a peat moss. So I use the, well, actually they have my own blend for me at there, but you can get the Falkirk succulent blend. And then I still add lava sand to that then at the A&S, and you'll be all set.
So you like the Falkirk blend?
Yeah, the Falkirk blend, and then I even add extra lava sand to that too.
Okay, and to clarify to this listener, you use lava sand, not lava rock. Okay.
Both. So the lava rock here is a top dressing in this situation.
Mm-hmm.
But the lava sand is all mixed in. So this is a euphorbia with the caudex. You can kind of see, I think, the big root ball there. So we, as collectors, want to see that. So we raise it up. In nature, it would be all underground.
Okay, great. I wanted to mention that I popped a book that I thought looked promising in the library. It's the Timber Press Guide to Succulent Plants of the World, a comprehensive reference to more than 2,000 species. So I put the link to it at the MarinNet. Oh,
this one would. So look, the other book I mentioned is a 70s version of the full range. This is the new modern version of the full range of succulents. Excellent book.
So with Gary's endorsement, so you can go to the library website, or of course, if you have questions, email me. And I did put my email and also the Marin Master Gardeners website in the chat as well. But if you go to the catalog and look under succulent plants as a subject heading or keyword search, you'll come up with a lot of great books that are at the libraries in Marin. So here's a really good question. Where do you buy your plants?
Well, you can buy plants almost anywhere now. You know, Rite Aid has them. Home Depot surprisingly has a good selection. There's a specialty nursery if you're in the north, Lone Pine Gardens. They're on the way to Sebastopol. They're open Thursday, Friday, Saturday, I believe. Bonsai and succulents. There's a fantastic nursery down on the way to Monterey, the giant power plant there. As you get to Moss Landing, there's a Dolan Road and you go in there, and Succulent Gardens, or S&G plants. Succulent Gardens has maybe 3 acres full of succulents there, all the kinds you can imagine. Where else?
Where do you like to buy locally?
Well, I often go on buying trips. So I go mostly down south to northern San Diego County where they grow, and Tucson and Phoenix. And so I buy in bulk wholesale and get the the rarer ones. Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
But yeah, locally, like I said, Home Depot, Sloat. I mean, everybody has succulents these days. And definitely the prices are rising and some are overpriced. So yeah, be careful. Don't spend too much for something.
So here's I feel like this question's come up a few times. Do you want to just quickly go over this? Can I just cut off a stem from a well-established succulent to try and propagate some more? I'm just afraid to cut off a part of a healthy plant and kill it. How long does it need to harden?
Yep, here's one. It was, I guess, rotting underneath. So I cut it, and it's been actually sitting here for probably a month. So sometimes they'll even grow roots while they're sitting out there, but this one is ready to be put in. Now here's a situation. I have a plant that I think is all set and all ready, but it's actually, I don't know if you can see it here, but there's a thin line that shows me that it's actually dead there. And you can see that's brown and the roots were dead. So now I make sure the dead is off. And there I have a edge of my plant. And this is already kind of really hardened off. So I probably could just, there's even a little root that was growing there. So you cut off a little more, you put it in, or I could probably even just plant the whole thing, but I'd probably cut it back somewhat and then plant it like that. And I would let it heal just out in the air. You don't have to put in water, like I said, or anything. So yes, now, if you haven't, this was an aeonium that cutting off, and it's all ready to go. Could I cut it here? Yeah, you can just cut it off. So you have something that's growing really tall and spindly, cut it off and repot it, and you're going to have a nice sensible plant. An echeveria that grows too stringy on a long stem, yep, just cut it off inch or two behind the head and let that dry off and put it in the ground, and you have a new baby. So this literally just cut off of a side of a euphorbia.
So it sounds like this person should not be afraid to take a cutting. Okay. All right, great.
I'm not going to take a cutting here in the middle of this, really. This is the best place at the joint to take the cutting. But if you have, you know, like some giant aeonium stalk that's just looking forlorn, you know, cut it off, start it over. Yeah.
So a few more shopping comments.
Right.
Someone just shares that they got 8 beautiful succulents at Costco yesterday for $21. So that's a good deal.
Believe it.
And someone asks if we are looking for more full-grown items to get a head start on the garden, do you recommend anywhere?
Yeah,
like
there's the
large cactuses with
the large. I mean, the dry garden in the East Bay. Richard, he has some great specimens there too, and some larger ones. And there's this guy in San Rafael, Gary Bartl or something. He has some succulents. So yeah, I don't really have public sales. I usually sell to my clients, but I have some larger specimens too. So give me a text or ring and we can hook you up with some here. Otherwise, Succulent Gardens would be a great place, like I said, and even more locally in the East Bay, the Dry Garden. And even the East Bay Garden has some.
So Dry Garden is East Bay, Succulents here. Are you comfortable? How should people get in touch with you? What's the best way? Do you want
text is great. Email. I'm not on the computer a lot, so it might take a couple days for me to get back to you on email, but you know, that's fine.
So should I pop that in the chat?
Yeah, sure. You can put my email and phone. Sure.
Okay. So
questions too, you can, you know, just send me a picture or something. I'll be happy to try to help you out with a little problem here.
Okay. So you're comfortable with my putting your phone number in?
Yeah.
Okay. So let me do that and people can text you. And do we have any more questions or did you want to demonstrate anything?
Yeah, well, let's see. Any more questions? I probably got a few more things to throw out, but just to show you how medusas can be so different. Look at this one with all of its little things there. They're just such interesting plants with so many great strides. Now this one, it's got my soil, right? I can't even get it out of the plant. There it comes finally. So it started to grow all the way down to the bottom. So I'm going to want to clean. Let's see. Clean out all this top spot. I just made a baby. I made a new plant. Oh yeah, here comes a second one there. So that one's kind of attached, but look, it does have its own big, oh shoot. We wanted it to come off of that root there. And that would have been better. But as it is, it still has that root back there. So it's going to be fine. Here, just clean away. So Haworthias too, just take this down like the aloe. And I like getting rid of those dead leaves. Now, if the root is kind of black and papery, that's a dead root. They're nice and white. So this genus, they'll even shed their roots deciduously. If it's too hot, they'll just cut them off and grow new ones later on. So it's not unusual to find a Haworthia with no leaves, I mean, no roots even. It'll just get rid of them. So it now will have much more room to grow. So look at how that plant was in that little pot swirling around and around. So eventually they do become pot bound, but succulents can stay in their pot usually a lot longer than most plants do.
So Gary, once again, a question about hardening. It seems like you have kind of a flexible notion about it, or do you have more specific guidelines? This person really wants to know how long the plant needs to harden before planting it back in the soil.
1 week.
Thank you. Okay. You need
Yep. If you want a definitive answer, it's 1 week.
Excellent. We did need a definitive answer, so now we have it. So I wanted to, you've gotten a lot of great thank yous. People love the demo.
Oh,
and as well as, you know, obviously the program itself, the presentation, the PowerPoint.
yeah.
I wanted to put out a last call for questions. Did I?
This one got knocked over. It's hardly got any soil into it, but still, it's just stuck in there. That was transplanted with my mix, so, or with a better mix, you know, not. Yeah.
So Gary, there's a question about an aloe. I have some aloe that it's incredibly top heavy and it starts to turn left and right instead of growing up. What should this person do?
So it could be a case of just like a giant Goliath that's getting too heavy, or is it more like a thin one like the Sillaris that comes up and just gets floppy because it's kind of a lazy climber and it leans on other stuff? So if it gets top heavy like that, in that situation, yeah, just cut them and restart them. And if it's something like the giant Goliath, you better send a picture, and I could try to advise you on where to cut it or if you should cut it or not.
Okay. And just in case anyone missed, in the text, I did put Gary's, in the chat, pardon me, I put Gary's phone number. You could text and send a photo or use Gary's email also in the chat, garybartl@gmail.com. And Gary's phone number, which is very generous of you to share, is area code 510-691-6567. And you can find that in the chat as well. So lots of thank yous. Last call for questions. We're getting close to time. I don't know, Gary, if you have anything more that you want to share in the demo.
Well, I hope that you feel a lot more comfortable now. So most people kill the succulents by overwatering or underwatering. Well, I'm only going to water my succulent when it rains in Death Valley because it's a desert plant. No. So hold back the watering. They can always be watered tomorrow, but you can't dry them out. And remember, you can go on vacation and leave your succulents alone and they don't need a babysitter. Yay. So really don't overwater and use a good soil and you'll have a lot of success.
So those are our two main takeaways if we remember nothing else.
Yes, there you go.
Okay. All right, last call for questions. This is your time. You have Gary's undivided. Oh, here we got one. Fairy, what is the botanical name for the plant fairy castle?
Fairy castle. Let me see if we can look it up and see. Yeah, is it a succulent? If it's not, I probably would never have a clue. And if it is, maybe send me a picture, I might recognize it.
I found it online. I just Googled it, botanical name for fairy castle, but I don't know if I can pronounce it. Acanthoserius tetragonus?
Tetragonus, okay. So it's a cactus. Ceres is a cactus, and tetragonus would probably be 4 parts and something like an Chrysula tetragona has 4 leaves.
Okay, I'll put the name in the chat for people with better Latin pronunciation than me. Oh, we did get a couple questions. Is it okay to use the cactus citrus soil if we can't do the mix of lava, sand, and potting soil?
Yeah, that'll be better than just straight stuff with the a lot of peat moss and stuff. So that would be better. It's going to have more drainage.
Okay.
And you can buy individual packets of the cactus soil and stuff, but you're going to be paying a lot more than if you mix your own. But the American soil has big bags of it too. So if you know an apartment, you might not want a 40-pound bag or something. So
got it. Okay.
So you can't pick up little batches of pumice or perlite at most nurseries.
And then mix it in. Yeah. Okay. Great. This is a great question. Is there a way to protect your in-ground succulents, a large installation, from the frost?
Well, a little bit of mounding would help that you're away, but generally frost descends. So do you have it on the south side? Do you, is there possibly a tree cover? Do you put up your own artificial cover? There was a garden that a client had me put up a plastic cover, and it really saved his plants this year, their plants. So, but if it's, large, you got a problem, do you want to save it all or just save, if you know which plants are more susceptible, you could just cover those. And then, when we get those big atmospheric storms, it sure would be nice to have things covered. And then we get those freezes usually in December. Beginning of December, and then usually by the end of January, our frost risk is pretty much over, usually. But yeah, you can cover. Otherwise, it's can you provide the right kind of microclimate where it heats up quick? Rocks really store the heat too. So if you have that, but generally something overhead, maybe even a garden umbrella would give it some a bit of protection. And also the cold tends to go down valleys. So if you're higher on a hill, you might have less frost risk than if you're down in the valley.
And do you recommend any of the plant covers you can buy, frost protection covers that you can buy, certain light fabrics, I think, or?
I haven't used a lot of brands. So just, like I said, I just did this once and it's been 5 years since I've done it before. So give me a report back though. Let me know how they work.
Okay. So it sounds like you try to situate the plant to protect it from frost. Okay.
Yeah. Or I will sell a plant to someone in Mill Valley that I won't sell to someone in San Rafael or Concord because I know of the risk for the freeze or the heat. Yeah. So
got it. Okay.
That's where you, if you work with somebody or even just get some advice and consultation, could make your garden a lot more successful for you.
Okay. All right. So plant for your environment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. A comment that you should sell your succulent potting mix for lazy gardeners.
Yeah, there you go.
And then a couple more questions. These will be the last. If a potted succulent is root bound, can that lead to rotting?
Usually it leads to malnutrition. And at a certain point, the plant starts to deteriorate because there's no soil left inside really. And so you'll have a lot of dead roots, a few live roots. And so essentially repotting is going to really be your situation. You can do root pruning to keep it in the same container, or you move it up a notch where it's an inch or two wider. You know, the 2-inch goes to the 6-inch. I mean, 4-inch, 4-inch goes to 6-inch. 6-inch goes maybe to a 1 gallon or something. So it's good to just bring it up slowly. You don't want to put a little plant in a giant pot or a giant plant in a little pot unless you want to bonsai, which just means to shrink, to retard growth. So you can bonsai a succulent by keeping it root bound. It'll grow a lot slower. I had these aloes that were in my friend's apartment. He had 4 little aloes in a 4-inch on his windowsill for a couple years. Finally, you know, hey, Gary, take these home, plant them in your garden. Well, they aren't going to grow big. They've been there 4 years. Well, I put them in, and within 2 feet away from the sidewalk, and within a year, they're out over the sidewalk, and I had to replant them further back. It took 5 hours to dig up the 4 plants. They were so rooted and so giant. Now they have stems maybe 6 foot long. And yeah, it's pretty amazing. Just give it the environment, but that's controlled. You can bonsai and keep it small, or you can put it in the ground and let it turn big. Now, not all do that, but this one did.
Okay, and our last question today is again about repotting and splitting. When you buy the plant and split it, then can you plant it in another container right away?
Especially if it was a situation like these Haworthias, where they come off and they just separate. You know, there weren't any real root damage here. So these can be potted up right away. Sometimes there's a thick root that might be connecting. And if you cut that, especially if it's a 1/2 inch or something, you definitely should let that heal as well before you. So if you take it apart and they come across really easy, then you can transplant right away. If you have to break the roots or, you know, even break the plant, then they should heal up. Yeah.
Okay, and our 1-week healing period.
Yes.
All right, well, with that.
Only went 5 days. Oh no, don't.
Well, I can't thank you enough, Gary. As always, an amazingly informative and entertaining program. Everyone learned a lot, I'm sure. I know I did. And so I just want to thank you for your generosity and your time today. And I want to thank everyone for attending. You had great questions, really interested audience. So I appreciate it. And with that, I am going to
have cuttings for everybody. So throw one out to the audience. Come by, get your free cutting.
That's the problem with Zoom. But other than that, it was very clear and wonderful. So I am going to end the meeting and say goodbye and have a great day, everyone. And thank you all again. Bye, Gary. Thanks so much.
My pleasure.
All righty. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.